Hey everybody, happy Halloween. At It's a Mimic, this is our favorite holiday out there. We absolutely love this entire month. You can tell because we're giving you literally more podcasts than most of you can listen to in the span of a month. And we're super excited to do everything horror. We've brought undead, character death. We've done black dragons. We've done the Shadowfell. We've talked about horror. We're talking about all sorts of Call of Cthulhu stuff. We've had specials on fiends. We've just been everything horror and ridiculous things. And we're very excited about this entire month. And so we thought we would bring it all together and talk about kind of the other side of things, away from the elves and the dwarves and the orcs. And we would talk about the kind of strangest, the newest of the classes, considering it's in 5th edition. Right, Dan, you want to back me up? All of the other 11 were in 3.5.
Oh, yeah.
But Warlocks...
Warlocks existed in 3.5 in a very different way, they were like were they a prestige class? 20th? No, they were a full class, but they were like a 20th book in by a third-party publisher kind of level thing. Like, they weren't by any means a standard, and 4th came out, and they weren't a thing on 4th, or were they?
I don't even remember 4th. I try to block that shit out.
I think they were a thing in 4th, and that's where they originally came in.
But the thing is that it's radically different, and you can tell they've got a very different feel than any other kind of spellcaster, any other kind of class. They definitely feel like the weird one. If you want to start magic, you're starting with the cleric or you're starting with a wizard, right? Maybe a sorcerer, but Warlock gives you a really strange perspective on what magic is.
Yeah, if you're a new player dipping your toe into Warlock for the first time, you're gonna have a bad time.
And while there's stuff out there about Fae, and there's a ton of stuff about archdevils, there's really not a whole lot about the great old ones, besides some passing mention of Cthulhu. And so we wanted to sit down and talk today about that. And while everybody else is gearing up and they've got their pumpkin carving going, I mean, we know that Terry is out trolling the clubs right now looking for a vampire goth girl, and Megan is probably drunken on a sugar high dancing on a table, and Brad is probably in bed by 8:30.
Yeah, probably.
He's a good boy.
Yeah.
But so it's Dan and I, we're here with Intern Dave, who is no longer going to be Intern Dave after this. He's finally earned a spot on the roster, assuming you don't fuck this up.
And a salary.
No.
No? Damn it, Dan!
So, you guys will know Dave from the Call of Cthulhu, the Deep Dark of Radiance podcast we've been playing. He plays Gun.
Also our relentless abuse for the past year on the actual podcast.
Yeah.
I still cry.
Good. You deserve to. But we're still waiting on all of those answers that Terry asked for. Anyway, let's cut to the music, and let's launch into the concept of cosmic horror and away from high fantasy, shall we?
Welcome to another special episode of It's a Mimic.
Hey, shut up, intern. Welcome to another special episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, a roundtable Dungeons and Dragons discussion where you never know what you're going to get. I'm Dan. With me, as always, is Adam, and as never is Dave.
Oh.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about Warlock patrons, specifically Great Old Ones, and their source.
Cool. I'm super excited about this. This is, I don't know why anybody bothers with anything else. As a matter of fact, I don't know of anyone that's ever chosen anything besides Great Old One for a patron.
I have played in your game as a Celestial Warlock.
I don't even know that. Because I don't give a shit. Anyway.
But no, like Great Old Ones, they're the ones everyone chooses. Is you're either Great Old One or
they're
you're
great.
Yeah, they're actually great, and I love them. They've got a really interesting flavor. It's the only class that you're going to be able to get like telepathy at level 3.
Yeah, and I like them because they're freaking weird, and we don't get enough of the aberrations and enough of the far realm stuff, and they really feel like they're coming from even beyond the far realms.
Exactly, like they're from the outer reaches, but their origins are far more humble in modern pop culture. And today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be breaking down some gods, giving you guys as Warlock Dungeon Masters, as Warlock players, an idea of who to go with as a deity or a patron for your Warlock.
Look, because the only thing that people are grabbing is Cthulhu. And there's so much more cool shit out there. And I feel like everyone goes, Lovecraft. And you can't really get any further than Cthulhu with your base research because everything just kind of leads back to big old tentacles, right? So let's kind of pull the film off this a little bit and find out what are we dealing with. And okay, where the fuck did this shit come from, Dan?
H.P. Lovecraft, who was born August 20th in 1890, Howard Phillips Lovecraft was born in Providence, Rhode Island. Dude had a messed up life. His dad died when he was young. His mom and the rest of their family never recovered, so he was basically raised by his grandparents, whose names were Whipple and Robbie.
So Whipple was his grandmother?
Whipple was his grandfather, and Robbie was his grandmother. And they were kind of relentless people. They were very early 1900s type people where the weak Howard Phillips Lovecraft had several phobias. Dude was afraid of the dark. And in response to that, Whipple decided to shut him in a dark house and made him get out.
That seems like a great idea.
Yeah. Man, that's superhero shit. That's super villain shit.
When
that's
he
Umbrella
was
Academy.
4 years old.
Oh my god, that's freaking Magneto level, like torture chamber shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
so after this was all done, he had nightmares for the rest of his life. Not surprisingly, dude was a shut-in. He was a bit weird looking. After his mom,
his face does look like a shoe.
It does. Once his mom died and his grandparents died and a lot of his aunts died, he was raised by his.
It's like, okay, hold on. So everybody that he knew except for Whipple and Robbie died.
Oh no, Whipple and Robbie died. The only one that lived was his Aunt Susie, who straight up hated him.
Jesus. Well, at which point did he get his letter to wizarding school?
I don't think a owl ever flew near his house.
It was all just bats.
Yeah,
just bats.
Endless bats. And the things that would haunt him in his dreams called night gaunts. This guy makes Voldemort look like a happy, sunny, rainbows and unicorn loving kid, right? Like, there's a lot going on. Thing is, H.P. Lovecraft was a real person in real world. So he started writing because he was xenophobic. He was afraid to go outside. And his aunts basically locked him in his room so that he would not affect her social life.
Good.
Yeah. Good. Super healthy upbringing. So he had...
Was he written by Charles Dickens?
It sounds like it. Like there's so much going on in the life of H.P. Lovecraft that you think it's fiction, but a lot of this rings true. It's absolutely bizarre that someone like this has lived this kind of life.
And that was the only life he did live, because didn't he die in poverty and like an unknown? And
before his works were ever fully popularized, he was long dead.
He was in like Weird Tales and some of the pulp magazines and shit, but he wasn't.
He wrote a lot of pulp magazines and had a couple like pen pals as well that would write back and forth and encourage him. But for the most part, dude was a shut-in and died as a shut-in in poverty before his tales ever really took off. And he started writing poems and used his nightmares as inspiration for these cosmic horror level entities that were coming in. He was also taking a lot from his peers at the time, who were also writing these weird, twisted fantasies and alien like entities from the outside coming in. It was a big time for that in the world of the spiritual movement, which was huge in the 1920s as well. Like, he kind of hit his stride right at the right point. And because of that, he wrote dozens of these cosmic entity level, like cosmic horrors into fiction that we now pull from for Great Old Ones as a Warlock class.
But it's all short stories and novellas. He doesn't have big
and
full
poems,
novels. Yeah, and poems. There's no big like 400-page novels. He's not Stephen King, right?
No.
He's Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's who we're talking about as far as the breadth of his work.
Yeah. And every single last one, I mean, dude just liked to throw consonants at a board, and that was his name for a thing. Like, you'll notice as we're going through a lot of these entities, these patrons, that we're going to be pronouncing them.
No, we're pronouncing them.
We're going to be pronouncing them as we want, basically. For Cthulhu, they're alone. There are 41 different translations.
Yeah, see, okay, so I did a whole lot of research into the proper ways of doing this. I found so many YouTube videos that were different pronunciations and whatnot. Every one of them is slightly different. And there are the quote-unquote purists out there, but even amongst the purists, they argue the idea behind it, and it says in the works themselves, these names are unknowable. Our mortal mouths cannot make the necessary noises in order to truly say these words.
If you had no teeth, 3 tongues, and 4 mouths, you might have a chance. But since we only have the one of all of those, we're good.
You only have 1 tooth?
Well, it's one big one.
God damn.
Awkward.
Fuck. All right.
So anyways, what we're doing today is we're going to be breaking down 12 deities that H.P. Lovecraft brought in to use as options for your Great Old One patron as a warlock. Now, DMs, you guys can pull from this as well to know how to behave or how to act as these patrons. Players, a lot of this is going to involve a lot of discussion between your DM and you to figure out where you stand on your mission, where these guys are going to be wanting you to move, how they want you to move, how they want you to act in the world.
This is not your cleric. This is not your paladin. This is not the people, oh, I have a god and he's over there and once in a while I pray to him and then I get to smite something real hard. Right? That's not what this is. There's a complicated relationship between a warlock and their patron, and I think a lot of that shit gets hand-waved. Right? Because we don't know what we're supposed to be doing.
There's so much flavor here. Like, I don't understand how people are like, no, yeah, Great Old One. I get telepathy every once in a while. And that's as deep as it goes. No, dig deep, man. These things are wanting you to sow discord and malcontent among everybody.
Or not. But it could be positive things. They may want you to create happiness, but their version of happiness. Not your version of happiness.
Exactly.
And there's really alien mindsets behind all of it. And we talk a little bit about alien mindsets in the Shadowfell episode and in the Feywild episode. I feel like this and Hags. That's where you get the really weird perspective on life and Dungeons and Dragons.
Exactly.
So
what we're going to do is we've each got 4 gods that we're going to be breaking down. We're going to roll the dice. And we are going to just go over one by one these gods. We're going to give a brief description, a kind of modus operandi of these deities, and how to run them in your games, and tips and tricks for that. So, gentlemen, grab your dice and let's roll. See who goes first.
Butch!
well,
Start off strong, Davey.
Intern Dave, you start with a 1, you're fired.
Damn it.
No, we need him. He's got 4 gods to cover.
Okay, you're fired in an hour and a half. All right, Dane, you rolled highest. You're
All right,
first.
I'm going to start with Atlach-Nacha, who is
sorry?
Atlach-Nacha. Think of that scene from Galaxy Quest where they're talking, and you're in the right headspace.
Atlach-Nacha?
Atlach-Nacha. Atlach-Nacha is a gigantic spider-like creature with a humanoid face over a distended, long onyx body. It is
There's a very similar creature in the Dark Tower series in the later books.
is there?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, Atlach-Nacha's first appearance was in 1934's The Seven Geshes. And for those of you who are out there in the world and want to read this, it's Geases.
Okay, so they don't have to guess how to spell it?
They don't have to guess how to spell it. He is a massive spider god who spins the webs that connect reality to the dreamlands. This is a creature of monumental size. This guy is said to be as large as a mountain in size, with these massive tree trunk-sized spindly legs that reach down. And he's got this humanoid face, but he's very contemplative. He's not exactly outward malignant, and like he's not out there being evil. He's more curious and wants to understand how humanity works and how our brains kind of tweak. So he is not necessarily an evil source. He's more neutral. I wouldn't say he's good, because he still demands sacrifices to himself. But he...
Oh, well, I mean, you gotta eat.
You gotta eat, right? So he's more about knowledge. He's more about planar knowledge as well, and it's often said that his webbing can create portals to other realms, namely the Dreamland, which is where Cthulhu spends a lot of his times. So he's really built into the web of Lovecraftian Great Old One lore this way. Now, as a Dungeons & Dragons patron, this guy would be getting you to collect odd, obscure pieces of aberrant knowledge of far-off planes and try to collect all of these weird pieces of information to maybe form a way to summon something in through the gate, through the Dreamland, something that's trapped there. That's what I would get him to do. Guys, what do you think about Atlach-Nacha?
Okay, so what's interesting is that, first of all, the Plane of Dreams is one of those far realm planes that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
It is out there. You can get there from the Astral Sea, which is a load of fun because you have that weird silvery thread on the top of your head. I think you can astral project into the Plane of Dreams. It's one of the only two places where you can just naturally do that, the other one being the Astral Sea. So I wouldn't take it from that. I'm looking at this creature who is connecting the dreamscape to reality and is curious, wants to understand. I don't think it understands what reality is. And it only sees mortals' dreams, which have their own unique logic and make no sense. And it probably thinks that people are fucking crazy. And it just wants to know how people work and why. And I would almost come at it with almost like a Fae perspective.
Yeah,
right?
very much.
Where you're sitting there and your patron says, okay, why are you awake during the day? I don't understand. Is there not safety in the darkness? Why is the darkness so feared by everyone? Why is everyone afraid that their teeth are going to fall out? How many?
What's wrong with falling?
Yeah, how many big cliffs are there in the prime material plane if you guys are always so scared of falling, right? And he would have all of these crazy different perspectives. Dan, you recently played a character in a little one-shot campaign where you were recording how every character died because you were a cleric of death. I would have this be almost kind of the same thing where you're recording how people are acting and trying to figure out why. Maybe your character is insane and just does not understand why people do the things that they do. What is marriage? Why would you mate? Why would you couple up? Does it not make more sense for you to have many mates and spread your gene pool wide? Right? And just strange perspectives on things.
Yeah.
And that's how I would try to run a Atlach-Nacha.
Atlach-Nacha.
That's what it was.
Davey, what do you think?
I like what you guys are saying. I think it makes perfect sense. I'm not as well informed about the astral plane and dream worlds and stuff, so I'm gonna have to trust you on that one. But I don't know what I can add to this.
So this guy would communicate to your warlock. The way I always like thinking about warlock patrons is how they communicate, and I think just saying, "Oh, you have a vision where your god does this," is a bit of a cop out.
Well, I think that he, of course, communicates through dreams.
Communicates through dreams, but I think they're like spawned on dreams.
I think you're just like narcoleptic. You just are in the middle of battle, all of a sudden, and down you go, face plant, take 1 point of damage because you just biffed it, and then you have a vision.
Yeah,
and the vision is like buckets. What the fuck? Right? Like,
yeah.
So that's how I would.
Yeah, I would also do the thing where, because a lot of the Great Old One stuff is psychic, I would have things like your character sitting down reading a book and the words change to be buckets, what the fuck, or something like that on the page where you're doing your research and all of a sudden the words are just messed up and then it doesn't reset. So you've just lost to this section of pages until you figure out, okay, well, how do I tell my god why we use buckets?
So this is Pact of the Tome would be a good one.
Oh, Pact of the Tome for this guy.
I could see Pact
sure.
of the Chain if you have a spider as well.
Yep. I'm 100% on board with that.
So, okay.
Okay, Adam, you're next.
That was me. All right, look. You're all sitting there and you're waiting because you're like, oh, it's Lovecraft. It's going to be Cthulhu. Let's just get this out of the way right now. I pulled the straw and got Cthulhu. First of all, there are a million different ways to pronounce Cthulhu, but there's no actual proper one, despite what the nerds on the internet say. The first appearance was in 1928's short story called Call of Cthulhu. He's also known as the High Priest of the Great Old Ones, the Great Dreamer, the Sleeper of R'lyeh,
R'lyeh is a city.
R'lyeh is a city that sank. It's beneath the oceans, and he is apparently asleep in it. There is another one of these words that is a nonsense garbage word that people argue about how to pronounce it all the time. But it's R''Lyeh. I'm going to put all of these spellings in the show notes. If you're interested, you can check him out there. He's also known as the Star Spawn. He's not an elder god. He's just a great old one. And there is a distinction. The elder gods are like the gods of creation, and the great old ones are their children that walk around and muck shit up, right? So he's described as a malevolent entity, and he's hibernating underwater. R'lyeh is in the South Pacific, specifically. Cthulhu's apparently the source of the constant anxiety for mankind at a subconscious level. So I'm pretty sure he has a Tumblr page. And he's also the subject of worship by a number of cults and religions. The short story guarantees in the work that Cthulhu will eventually return, and there's not a fucking thing you can do about it. He's considered a great old one within the pantheon of Lovecraftian cosmic entities. The creature's since been featured in numerous popular culture references, but Lovecraft depicts him as a gigantic entity worshipped by cultists. He looks like he's an octopus, a dragon, and a caricature of a human form. He has pulpy, tentacled head surmounted with grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings, and he's, again, as large as a mountain. So, I mean, do with that what you will. The octopus dragon doesn't really suit the image that I see out there in pop culture, where he's just like, just a fat guy with wings and tentacle face. But I can see how we landed on this. There was also a drawing in one of the books that depicted him looking kind of what the famous one is. Yeah. But the drawing was actually of a little totem and not him itself. So it was a totem. It was a representation of what someone, a fictional someone, thought he may look like. And now we say that's canon.
Yeah.
So you can really kind of make Cthulhu whatever you want him to be. One of his cultists actually reports that the Great Old Ones are telepathic and knew all that was occurring in the universe. They were able to communicate with the first humans by molding their dreams and therefore established the Cthulhu cult. But after R'lyeh, I don't even remember how I pronounce it now. Anyway, after it sank beneath the waves, it says, the deep waters, quote unquote, the deep waters full of the one primal mystery through which not even thought can pass, had cut off the spectral intercourse. Sex. Nothing, guys? Just, all right. Moving along. Speaking of sex, head priests are said to be immortal, implying that Cthulhu can grant that at will. So whether or not we're dealing with telepathy, it sounds like all of the gods that we're going to talk about technically give you telepathy, which I think is why it comes like built in with the Great Old One subclass. Mm-hmm. But apparently Cthulhu also gives you immortality, which just, again, would that come hard-baked?
Well, you get like false life pretty quick with the Great Old One.
Yeah, this seems like something that like high-level monks and druids get, and they gotta fucking earn it, and you're kind of getting it with a hand wave from a Great Old One. So I think that there's got to be some sort of ritual that would work in as a DM. The cultists have been known to inhabit everywhere between deserts to Arctic zones, and like seaside and swamps. They've been all over, so you're really not bound by a specific location. And they have a chant, and the chant sounds like this. Hey, this is Adam. You can check the show notes to actually read what the chant is, but you're not actually supposed to say it out loud because it's apparently super fucking cursed. So I'm sitting here in the editing process listening to my own recorded voice say it over and over because, you know, I wanted to put an effect on it, and I wanted it to hold weight. And then all the power in my house went out while I was in the middle of doing this. And so for the sake of not angering the ancient old gods by chanting a forbidden phrase over and over again and then spreading it out to the world in all of your speakers and whatnot, I'm not going to include the actual pronunciation on this. Sorry. But it's Halloween, and I really don't want to have my voice be the harbinger, the catalyst for the apocalypse. So, yeah. And what it means is, in his house at R'lyeh, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. Now, if I were going to use Cthulhu as a god, if I had a player come to me and say, hey, you know what? I want to use him as a Great Old One's patron, I would say, please don't. I would say that this is the same thing as having Batman or Gandalf show up in your game. I'm not interested in it. The same way that if someone says, hey, are we ever going to meet Drizzt? I'd say, no. I'm just no.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. We're not doing a who's who of wacky fanfic nonsense that you want to play with. If you want to really dig into the Warlock thing, try to pick something else that's not well known, that you can own yourself, that you're not trying to fit in with.
There are so many other options that are just as open-ended.
Which is the point of this whole episode, honestly. Yeah. So, but I mean, I think if you had to do Cthulhu, then everybody makes him aquatic, but that's just because he's sleeping underwater. He's not really about aquatic at all. He's about anxiety and dreams and telepathy, right? And he is about insanity and stress.
Yeah.
And I think that it would be a curse to be immortal with the mindset of a cultist that prays to Cthulhu, because you would be insane forever.
Well, and if you look at the abilities that you get as a Great Old One Warlock, they all lead into this. You are twisting wills, you are twisting minds, you are twisting... Like, it's all very borderline psionic, right?
It also like skews evil to me, right?
It does,
like,
yeah.
This is why warlocks are considered evil. It's not because of the Archfey, guys. It's because of this.
Yeah. Well, level 14, you create thralls.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So, anyways, Davey, who you got next?
I got Shudde M'Ell. Shudde M'Ell. Shudde M'Ell.
Shudde M'Ells.
Shudde M'Ell. Shudde M'Ell is a mile-long great worm that burrows through the earth, melting rocks in his wake. I imagine him to just be like this giant, I mean, as it says, worm that's a mile long and burrows, leaving melting rocks in its wake.
This is why you're an intern.
Now, he's not just like a regular worm, of course. As with everything Lovecraft, he's got giant tentacles hanging out of his mouth.
So we're talking bigger than a purple worm. We're talking bigger than the graboids in Tremors.
Oh, much bigger.
Bigger than the sandworms in Beetlejuice. We're talking about the sandworms in Dune?
Yeah.
That's the level we're talking?
Yeah. No, he's actually from a race of creatures called Chthonians. Is that right?
I think it's Chthonians.
Chthonians. There's no wrong way to say this, right?
No.
Or I think.
Well, actually, Chthonian actually is a word, and it just means those that dwell underground.
Not even underwater, just underground.
No, underground. As a matter of fact, Chthonic means subterranean. That's a real word that just nobody uses.
That makes sense.
And I'm a nerd.
One of the other names he goes by is the Great Chthonian, and another one is the Burrower Beneath. So, I mean, that all lines up.
He used to be the moderate Chthonian, but he's really stepped up his game.
It's great for him.
Yeah.
He, like some of the other ones we've already discussed, is also telepathic. He has telepathy. He also has heat projection, which I'm assuming is what he uses to burrow. He uses...
He melts the rock in front of him.
Laser beams.
Yeah.
Frickin' laser beam on his head.
Worms with frickin' laser beams. Which allows him to tunnel at a ridiculously high speed.
Do we have any reference to that for D&D? What ridiculously high speed is? I know that like Leviathans and shit can move like a mile a minute or a mile and around and shit like that. Or they've got winds that can go a mile and around. So if those things are mortal creatures, this thing might be able... Like that's the level of speed we're talking?
I always kind of thought it was more like a white dragon burrowing through snow and ice.
Okay. So
I would say it would be faster than a white dragon burrowing through snow and ice. Like, this is the thing where if you...
These are gods.
These are gods. Right? So this is a thing that if it's coming up on you, or you are trying to get away with it, or get away from it, you will not win. It will catch you.
You need a portal.
You need a portal. Right? This thing can be anywhere in moments.
All right, that's it. I would say look at your monk, right, who is going to have the dash as a bonus action and all that nonsense with the increased movement speed. You find whatever the fastest technical build is, times it by 2, and that's how fast this thing moves. Does that...
Yep.
There's no rule. That's how I would homebrew it.
I've seen a build out there that breaks the speed of sound. So...
Was it 3.5?
No, 5th.
Wow.
Yeah.
Weird.
So,
Just outrunning thunder damage.
Just out, yeah. Right?
All right. Sorry, Dave, to cut you off.
Shudde M'Ell's first appearance was in 1969 in a
Nice.
story called Cement Surroundings by Brian Lumley. One of the other rumors that circle around Shudde M'Ell is that he was the cause of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. This guy is underground, always. He is always moving, and he's...
So he's the guy who sunk Tokyo or Japan?
I would go back a little further, like Atlantis.
Yeah, I would
Did he sink R'lyeh, or was there a specific catastrophe?
I don't think there was a specific catastrophe that did it, but I do know that there, like, I would have this guy, like, be the cause of tidal waves, right? Like, he's not just earthquakes. Give him tidal waves.
What I like...
Give him, like, volcanic explosions where he just got too close to the surface once and keeps going.
Sinkholes, man. Sinkholes.
I like the idea of using this guy as maybe the creator of the Underdark, the big, dark underground dweller. Yeah. The guy that, is a mile long, so he's able to make these giant pockets that are
and we've,
huge enough for
we've talked about there's that one god that keeps on trying to break the surface.
And he can't get up there for whatever magical bullshit reason.
This is the magical bullshit reason.
Yeah. To have this god go up against a great old one and get knocked back. This is a great reason why the Underdark is always shifting and moving. Beyond purple worms are wormy, right? Yeah. Like, you can really hard bake this in. This feels like an Underdark monster.
Yeah. I would have this thing spawning purple worms as well.
Maybe instead of tentacles, you have purple worms hanging out of his mouth.
Oh my god. Like, just the amount of scale just to have, like, the purple worms are the tentacles.
I don't have an answer to that, guys. We've talked about Japan and tentacles in the same podcast. Now I'm just trying to keep it on.
Man, I really want to go fishing now.
No.
All right. So let's grab our day.
Was there anything else for the Great Chthonian?
Honestly, man, like, I would pull. You mentioned Tremors. We mentioned Dune. We mentioned all, like, Beetlejuice. We mentioned all these ideas of these great sandworms, these great worm creatures. Pull on that. Worms are creepy as hell.
Pull on your worm.
Pull on the worms.
Moving on.
Okay. Let's roll for the next round.
Roll for the next round. Got a 19.
4.
I got a 3, so...
All right. My next one will be... I went with the spider god. Let's go with the serpent god next. I'm going to be talking about Yig.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about me.
No, wrong kind of serpent. Yig is the father of serpents, the god of snake kind. He is he's actually relatively small in terms of the other Lovecraftian gods. He's more human-sized, even. He screams Yuan-Ti to me. We're really reading his description.
Well, it's funny because when we started talking about this stuff in the last week, I've discovered that the Yuan-Ti are known as the children of Yig in some actual, some third-party material. So.
Yeah, I can see it. So Yig is, he looks like an anthropomorphic, human-sized snake deity. He was first created by Zalia Bishop, and then almost completely rewritten by Lovecraft in 1929's The Curse of Yig, which is a story purely about it's a cabin in the woods story where this couple goes to the woods, the wife kills a nest of snakes, and the husband loses his mind about Yig coming to exact justice for the slain serpents at this cabin. This
has got really biblical undertones as far as I'm concerned, with the man and the woman out in the woods, and then the snake, the evil serpent, right?
Yeah, Yig is not necessarily straight evil either. He's more of one of those more ambiguous, definitely leaning towards evil because most of Lovecraft does. But he cares about his serpents, and he is incredibly protective about snake kind. So if I'm bringing this guy in, you've got a lot of Yuan-Ti, you've got a lot of Naga, you've got a lot of, even to a certain extent, Lamias.
No, not in 5th ed. Not 5th ed Lamias.
Pull from previous editions and bring them in there, right?
Like AD&D Lamias.
Yeah, why not?
5th ed is lions. Now they're
and like 3.5 were snakes, and 4th were bugs. Right, like the Lamias.
Come on, wizards, pull your shit together.
Lamias could be anything. So I would definitely make a highly serpent-based society that worships this guy, and then your character's an offshoot of it. If you're playing a Great Old One Warlock whose patron is Yig, play a Yuan-Ti Pureblood. Why the hell not? Play a shifter with snake-like traits. Why the hell not? Right? I would definitely be going down in that route, and your entire mission with this guy is always going to be protecting snake kind. This kind of character would be amazing to run in the Tomb of Annihilation. Yeah. Yuan-Ti are everywhere in there.
Okay, all right, I gotta ask. We've kind of hinted at it a couple of times, and we'll continue to hint at it in the future, but... So, when it comes to dragons, and you have your dragon ancestry, and you're a dragonborn, and everyone's like, oh, can I grow a tail? When do I get my wings? I know I'm not a dragonborn, but can I get fire breath at 15th level, or whatever it is, right? And everybody's looking for how to become more draconic. When it comes to your Great Old Ones warlocks, are you going to give them spider-like features? Their eyes start to separate and segment.
If 100%.
Or their lower jaw can distend and they can put their head back and swallow small creatures and shit. Like, are you slowly morphing them into an abomination of some sort?
110%. The aberrant taint of...
Yay! Aberrant taint.
The aberrant taint of these Great Old Ones will twist the physical reality of your creature. Right?
I believe that.
Yeah.
So you get I'm just moving on through that.
I bet you're moving through that taint.
Just powering right through.
Your character, even if you're human, like, you will start getting a sheen to your skin as you start to grow scales, or your eyes will become slitted snake eyes with the bi lenses, right? The bilids. You start getting venom sacs. You get the ability to spit venom. Maybe you get, at later levels, you straight up can turn into a giant snake and slither around. I don't see why not. I mean, there's balance issues here, but it's the boon of Yig. Do it.
Yeah, like, I really want you to get specific patron level powers as you go. If you're going to put all this time and effort into working with your patron, you should be able to spider up or worm up or whatever it is. You should get a burrow speed at 12th level, right? You need to sit down with your DM and say, this is the crazy bullshit that I want to do. Tell me what am I in for here?
Yeah, I'm on board for this.
And if it feels overpowered, you know what? This doesn't feel overpowered. This feels like a feat. So maybe replace an ASI with it.
Yeah. Know what? And I don't think this necessarily has to be just with Great Old Ones. I mean, it's what we're talking about today, but all across the board with your Warlocks. If you're Archfey, if you are Celestial, if you are...
The Undying or the Archdevil.
Right? Or you should be able to...
You should just be able to turn into some sort of six-sided sword.
Sure, why not? As a Hexblade.
Fit it in there?
No.
Because Hex is 6. Blade is sword.
I missed Harry.
Anyways, Adam, I believe you're next.
No, I was last.
It's Davey.
He rolled a 3. I got a 4.
I keep on forgetting you're here.
I keep forgetting I'm here.
I keep hoping you leave. Anyways, continue.
The next one I got was Tsathoggua, which is...
Gazoon type.
It's a mouthful. You got to make sure you get that at the beginning.
Yeah, because it starts with a T.
Yeah.
It's TS, right?
Yeah, Tsathoggua. I've been practicing that all day.
Very, very well done. Very well done.
Thank you.
I imagine what the guy driving next to you as you're sitting at the red light going, Tsathoggua, Tsathoggua, Tsathoggua.
The window down, just yelling, Tsathoggua! Anyways, moving on.
Yep.
I'm just going to let one of the characters from Clark Anthony Smith's book, The Tale of Satampra Zeros, explain his appearance. He was very squat and pot-bellied. His head was more like a monstrous toad than a deity, and his whole body is covered with an imitation of short fur, giving somehow a vague sensation of both the bat and the sloth. His sleepy lids were half lowered over his globular eyes. The tip of a queer tongue issued from his fat mouth. So this to me is big toad creature.
Okay, what is the imitation of short fur? What is imitation short fur?
AstroTurf.
AstroTurf? I would have said it's that shit that's on Terry's face and he calls it beard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
It's about the same, really.
About the same, yeah.
Some other names for Tsathoggua are the Sleeper of Nakai, Ithaqua, and he's an old one. He's really lazy. All right? He is very slothful. He doesn't move. In fact, this is the kind of guy that even when he's like ravenously hungry, he waits for others to come and sacrifice things to him to eat.
He's the kind of person that eats the sacrifice and the sacrificer.
Probably.
Yeah.
If you show up without something to feed him, you're going to get eaten. If you show up with something for him to eat, you're still going
to get eaten, yeah.
He is subterranean. And he left Saturn when his continent iced over. He was...
Specifically Saturn?
Specifically Saturn.
Specifically Saturn.
There's a mountain on Saturn. I forget what it's called.
Voormithadreth, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where he lived. And then when...
And he was there with Atlach-Nacha. Both of them come from this Saturn.
Okay, all right, I gotta ask, though, because it's a gas giant and there are no mountains. Is this something like from the rings? It's one of the freaking
ancient
moons?
No, it's a continent on Saturn itself. It is just from before it was a gas giant.
No, that's not how physics works. Fuck, ow, my brain. Shit, balls, fuck, no.
1920s astrology, man.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would change that to be one of the moons, but it doesn't really freaking matter.
Well, while he was there, he actually had some followers that were called Voormi. They're cave-dwelling humanoids with 3 toes. They're umber-colored. They're covered in fur, and they communicate with dog-like howls.
Oh, all right, I gotta ask. The 3-toed, the lazy. You guys say toad monster. I'm thinking sloth monster. Like somewhere between the two, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what I figured.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I would think like a diseased sloth is what I would do with this. Like something with like that...
Patches of hair coming off.
It has that amphibious nature underneath the fur that it almost looks like it's just like attached through slime. Like when your dog...
Like he doesn't have fur. He's just like really sticky.
Did you guys watch Buffy?
Yeah,
of course.
Do you guys know Balthazar from Buffy?
Yeah.
That's what I'm picturing,
cool.
only a little more...
I kind of view it like a dog who is running along like a salmon spawning bank and just rolls through the salmon to get that scent. It's just doing that with fur.
No, you see, I got it the other way around, though. I'm thinking it is a toad where you like smear it with dog hair.
Yep.
Right? And so it's just kind of this weirdly hairy...
I've got a friend who has a Malamute. So it's like sitting on that dude's couch. You just get up and you're half dog.
Some sort of half man, half bat sloth.
So half sloth, half Batman?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. But the other thing I liked about him was that he does have these multiple followers.
I'm sorry, Dave. Where are the drugs? You gotta tell me because I'm not gonna figure it out for myself.
Where is he? Now can you go get him too?
Anyways, what do we got, Dave?
He has we just went over the Voormi. He does have another form of servitors. So his other servitor is what are known as formless spawn, which are a polymorphic black ichor goo that are extremely resilient. They can take any shape, and they attack by trampling, biting, and crushing. They are also, in the game Call of Cthulhu, powerfully acidic. But from what I was looking at, that's not really the case.
They're black puddings, right?
Yeah, this feels black pudding to me.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is the trample, the biting, the crushing. That's not black pudding, right? It's weird that they are they can take any shape and they're flexible, but I guess they harden and squish.
Well, black puddings and oozes have slam attacks.
They have slam attacks because they hit you with a pseudopod, but like it's...
Well, that's basically what this is. Just do it with the full body of it, up the damage dice a bit, throw in a little bit of acid, and you're good.
You know what I would do with these guys? I would go the X-Files way with their black goo and have them take over people as well.
Yep.
And
cool.
have there be like an infection through the world with the black goo. And people just get, like lazier? What do these guys, how do they serve... Tsathoggua.
Essentially, they are just protectors of his temples, keeping them from being defiled. But I also kind of like the idea of getting these things out into the world.
So what I would do with these guys is these would be like, let's target the active, let's target the fit, and
we're going to take down all tabaxis.
Right, all tabaxis. And what it does is, I think you hit the nail on the head. It turns them slothful, but also ravenously hungry. And they just start eating everything.
Okay, you put gluttony with
Oh yeah,
sloth on
yeah,
this?
100%.
Do you have anything else?
Not really.
All right, good, because I've got a thing about gluttony here. All right, so when I think of gluttony, I think of hordes. I think of, like, Dan, you're talking about these massive, like, groups that are moving around, just eating everything that they can find. I'm gonna go to the Black Goat of the Woods with 1,000 Young. That is the title. One of the two titles, also the Lord of the Woods. This is Shub-Niggurath. Now, for those of you who are screaming at the radio, I am pronouncing it Shub-Niggurath because I'm not a horrible person. Lovecraft was horribly racist.
Yeah.
You know, ridiculously over-the-top racist. Dan said xenophobic a few times, but that's putting it nicely. This guy was a brutally racist individual. And if you are going to investigate the Lovecraftian mythos, you got to be ready to stomach some of that shit. He was a product of the times, but a fearful product of the twisted times, right? So we're not condoning any of that shit here by doing this. We're looking at his really cool, fun monsters, and we're ignoring his horrible hate crimes. So
Yep.
let's move past this. Shub-Niggurath first appeared in the 1928 story, The Last Test. And there's not a whole lot else that Lovecraft himself did. The Shub-Niggurath has been kind of taken over by other authors and whatnot. And a lot of it's very contradictory. They don't even agree on whether or not Shub-Niggurath is an outer god or a great old one, or if it's male or female. In a later story, there's an underground temple of Tsathoggua that had been turned into a shrine of Shub-Niggurath, who's known as the All-Mother and Wife of the not-to-be-named one, which they hint is either Hastur, Yog-Sothoth, or Yig, which is very strange.
Yig? Really?
Yep.
Jeez.
In the expanded mythos, a priest of Shub-Niggurath named Tjog says the gods friendly to man could be arrayed against the hostile gods, and that Shub-Niggurath, Nug, and Yeb, as well as Yig the serpent god, were ready to take sides with man. So Yig and Shub-Niggurath, we don't really talk about Nug or Yeb this episode, but those two specifically are not really evil with a capital E. They're just otherworldly and bizarre. They're not nihilistic. They're not all-consuming. They're not about death, but they're about horrific, disgusting creation. I ran across this, and buckle in because I absolutely loved this. A Redditor started to talk about the idea of what cosmic horror is and the difference between horror and disgust, and what Shub-Niggurath really has to offer here. And it's not your just death and destruction and insanity that we're used to seeing. So I'm going to quote Kexizok, and this is a great quote. An interesting idea that came up in a philosophy class was the distinction between disgust and horror. I can't quite remember the names of the philosophers involved in that discussion, but it broke down to this. Humans feel horror at the idea of death and the trillion forms it takes, but disgust at what we feel in response to life outside the typical boundaries we expect to see it. If we read about a person dying, we feel horrified. If we see guts and blood exposed, displaced, or otherwise outside of our acceptable context, we feel disgusted. Disgust gets associated with things like cancer, tumors, insect hives, maggots, mutation, growths, etc. Incidentally, the class was philosophy in Lord of the Rings. Tolkien's orcs are a perfect example of the disgusting. They breed in dark places like maggots. They are malformed creatures that were once elves, and they are mindless, impulsive, and driven. The scary thing about them isn't that they want to kill you, it's that there's so many of them. Zombies fall into this category as well, not to mention common animals like insects, fish, and reptiles. This is always the guideline I use to conceptualize Shub-Niggurath. Azathoth, who we'll talk about shortly, leans more toward horror. Shub-Niggurath leans toward disgust. Azathoth is decay. Shub-Niggurath is the nightmare that grows and feeds on the wound. Usually a monstrously massive ball with writhing tentacles in every direction, where either a giant black goat's head protrudes or many gaping maws can be seen. Yeah, right? She's usually surrounded by hundreds of twisted, crossbreed monstrosities, mashing together different species that she's mated with.
It's got an Island of Dr. Moreau kind of feel.
Absolutely,
yeah.
But instead of like Goat Man and Sloth Man and Cat Man, it's
Goths.
It's Goths.
Goths, yeah.
Terry's very happy.
You Goths me there.
It's goat cats.
Yeah.
And it is but you gotta it's tree maggots. It's every form of life that's been mashed together, and she's got 1,000 young that follow her around that are constantly feeding. And she's got these many mouths as well. It makes me think of the way that the Abyss spawns demons. And I know she's not a demon lord, but I would have her as a god behind the scenes, worked into the nature of the Abyss, spewing forth infinite demons and looking to mindlessly procreate in a perversion of nature. This is the kind of great old one that would be worshipped by incubi and succubi. I feel like dark wizards have worshipped her when they've created griffins, hippogriffs, chimeras, manticores, and the monstrosities that are just 2 animals mashed together, or 3 animals, right? Druid circles have probably worshipped her, especially the Circle of Spores. I would say that she has links to Tiamat and Tiamat's spawning pits and Grumpsh, because Grumpsh was all about the prolific nature of orcs being able to mate with anything. I can see the 2 of them having an arrangement, Shub-Niggurath and Grumpsh. I feel like hags, because they've got weird procreation rules as well, may have some sort of dealing. They may pray to her, but not necessarily have her as a direct patron. And I feel like she should inspire conjuration and summoning magics, as well as specifically transmutation. I'd give a familiar that's a homunculus with like a twisted, bizarre body and horrific features. And I would also say, though, that if you're going to bring this in with all the breeding and mating and spawning and stuff,
you need to bring it up in your session 0.
Yeah, make sure your table's cool with this before you start to just be a bard about it. So that's what I have for Shub-Niggurath. I feel like she's supposed to be a mountain that is floating, just millions of tentacles, all different sizes, and she's hovering above the ground, and beneath her, in her shadow, are these quote-unquote 1,000 young, which is absolutely disgusting.
I would almost have like reality twisting underneath her. So like she's floating over things, and things that just are near in proximity are warping into this creation.
I would look into the Sibriacs, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, as a way to inspire kind of what she does as well, because I don't know if you're familiar with the Sibriacs, Dave, but the Sibriacs is a demon? I think it's a demon.
Yes.
That just warps the mortals around it to be malformed, misshapen, horrible, like mutant growth creatures.
They're basically gibbering mouthers, but not.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I really like Shub-Niggurath because this is weird, and she's not bad. She likes life, she likes creation, but she is going to give you a level of creation that you're not okay with.
Yeah.
And you're going to see things like tentacles spewing out of every orifice on somebody's head while they're breathing through their belly button because it's grown teeth and lungs behind it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's freaking weird stuff like that, and I'm excited about it.
Okay.
Shall we roll another round?
Let's roll another round. We got a couple more each to get through here, gents. You're a cock.
I got a 17.
I got a 15.
I had a 15, but now I have a 7.
Roll better.
Yeah, come on, Dan.
Don't hit my dice.
Wait till everybody else is done. Wait your turn.
So y'all get to hear my voice again. I'm going to go back to back. I want to talk about Yog-Sothoth. Yog-Sothoth first appeared in 1941 in the case of Charles Dexter Ward, and I'm going to quote from the Dunwich Horror. Yog-Sothoth knows the gate. Yog-Sothoth is the gate. Yog-Sothoth is the key and guardian of the gate. Past, present, future, all are one in Yog-Sothoth. He knows where the old ones broke through of old, and where they shall break through again. He knows where they have trod earth's fields, and where they still tread them, and why no one can behold them as they tread. He is known as the lurker at the threshold, opener of the way, the gate, the key, and the guardian. Beyond one, all in one in all. He is said to be an ever-shifting conglomeration of glowing, chaotic orbs, and he is non-linear. This thing doesn't even look like a creature. It is just glowing lights. He can see through time. He knows past, present, and future because he's both one with time and space, as well as being trapped outside of the universe. Whatever you want to make of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
His favor is usually gained via human sacrifice or eternal servitude. So, I mean, he seems pretty neutral until you get to that nonsense. It's suggested that he's an outer god, and his name may be a perversion of an Arabic phrase that means the abnormal ones are coming, which is super ominous, but doesn't mean a whole lot. He's not necessarily evil, right? He's greatly unknowable, which creates a problem in D&D. In a later work, he actually meets the protagonist of the book and offers a glimpse of the multiverse, warning that such an influx of knowledge would destroy anyone's sense of self, which means that he's about forbidden knowledge. If you're going to use him in a game, you got to add sanity checks. This is something that divination wizards and knowledge domain clerics would be tempted to look into as well if you're going to multi-class. Aboleths, I feel, with their long memories and their knowledge almost existing at a time, would be somehow linked in with Yog-Sothoth. And hags. Again, with the hags, especially the divination and the other worldly, weirdly magic. Warlocks, I feel, should be able to gain access to spells revolving around divination or planar travel or even banishment. That kind of fits with all this. But any player should be warned that going down this path will lead to insanity before it will lead to answers. And I would be really upfront with your player about, hey, every once in a while I'm going to tempt you with this. And you may go insane and lose your character. So you may have to make some character choices here that are tough.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of creating a town that has lost its mind to the insanity of this. And because there's a conduit to Yog-Sothoth somewhere in it. And it can look like a giant obelisk. It can be the monolith from 2001 Space Odyssey. Or it could be a tiny little carving. Right, but it's a conduit. And gibbering mouthers spew forth. And they're the final forms of those who have seen beyond what a mortal can comprehend. I like the idea of the vast knowledge twisting the mind until time and space distort. And even the body of the witness becomes malformed and mal-shaped. That is fun for me. And I think that is a great warning for your players. So maybe the more that they see into it, the more they lose their ability to do basic things like speak or understand things in a linear fashion. And you could have them suffering levels of exhaustion just because they don't know why they need to sleep, right? And eventually, if they ever lose control of their character and they're like, all right, you know what, roll up a new character, then they can watch their old character slowly melt and get misshapen and malformed into a gibbering mouther that would then attack them. And I think that is a different kind of cosmic horror that we haven't seen. And again, he's not evil, right? He's just all-knowing in everything. And I don't know, this is almost a bigger concept. You know how the Abyss has an infinite number of levels that are infinitely wide, but you can go to level 87? And so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
This is the same kind of physics-bending logic. Right, so do you guys have any thoughts about Yog-Sothoth?
No, man. He's you cross that line into the out there. I would not allow a Yog-Sothoth, great old one. That seems out there for me. If you want to have the knowledge guy, I'd go Atlach-Nacha or something that's a little bit more material, a little bit more knowable, because he's so far and so beyond. This guy sits, because of his age and his power level, he sits above most deities. And you look at what other warlock patrons, their level is, they're rarely gods. They're often they're generals and lieutenants, right?
Yeah, well, they're lesser gods. They're going to go toe-to-toe with Tiamat. They're going to go toe-to-toe with, I guess Bahamut, but I'm trying to think what the lesser gods are in the D&D pantheon.
Well, it's like demon princes and stuff like that.
Yeah, like Demogorgon and Orcus and whatnot. That's kind of where we're going.
So this Yog-Sothoth being of ultimate unknowable power that is gate and key. No, man, that's up there. You might be. You might be fighting a cult of him, or you might be having to explore an ancient crypt or an ancient library devoted to him to gain information, and that is going to be a messed up, aberrant experience in your game. I would not have your character's focus be that guy. Right? There's many other ways to scratch that itch.
Yeah, that's a good point. This would be hey, I want to go talk to Yig. I'm going to go to the far realms. But first you have to pass through the realm of Yog-Sothoth, and you will learn infinite knowledge. And this is maybe when you drop prophecies on your players. Mm-hmm. But Yog-Sothoth should not have a stat block.
No.
Should not even have a voice. Should just be will and power and time itself. right? And like, how do you use that as a patron?
Right? And or like even if you have to go and like get information that only Yog-Sothoth knows. No, you're going to a library of Yog-Sothoth's followers and fighting them for that sacred piece of information. That is this twisted thing that is a cursed item that you bring with you, right? Like it everything it touches is malformed and misshapen like Yog-Sothoth is and twists reality at its will. Right.
I feel like the high priests of Yog-Sothoth who have communed with him have had their eyeballs burned out of their head from looking into the great unknowable lights. For those of you that have seen it, and they've got the dead lights,
yeah,
that's what this shit is to me. So anyway,
yeah, no, I'm on board with that. Davey, you are next.
The next one is my favorite. I really like this one. His name, her name, I'm not sure, is Ithaqua, and they first came around in 1941. Now, Ithaqua is essentially just a Wendigo. In fact, that's one of the other names that it goes by, along with the Windwalker and the God of Cold.
They're really stretching for that last one. The God of... I don't know, we run out of words. Cold.
God of the Cold. Sorry,
the cold.
My bad.
I'm sorry.
My
God
mistake. Also the White Silence.
The White Silence.
Yes.
That was you for half of Call of Cthulhu.
You're not wrong. He's a horrifying...
Also you for half of Call of Cthulhu.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm going to leave.
Promises.
No, I won't. I need this job. He's a horrifying giant with a roughly human shape and glowing red eyes. He's got 2 long legs, but each leg has like the 2 knee joints, one going forwards, one going backwards.
No, hold on. 2 separate knee joints, like one above the other,
Yes.
or 2 like matched together so it can go into
No, like one on the bottom, one on
Like
the top.
bi-hinged legs.
Yeah, it's...
Like
creepy.
goat legs.
Are goat legs like that?
Yeah.
Weird.
Are they?
Or satyr legs or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, they
Okay.
are.
Satyr legs are, yeah.
Which are goat legs. Yes. Yes.
I'll take your word for it.
Sure.
He also has long arms, which are unproportionally large, ending in big long claws. And then, of course, sunken features with wispy white hair. I mean...
The White Walkers, but like super tall, lanky White Walkers.
Yeah, big claws as well.
I'd say like it's a mixture of a White Walker, a Yeti, and the Mothman. I don't know. Like it sounds like this is a twisting of all of it. I love they're Wendigos. That's what they are. That's what he is. Yeah.
Essentially, his father is Hastur and his mother is Shub-Niggurath.
Shub-Niggurath.
That's the one. He scours the Arctic and the subarctic. He is encountered by Nader.
By Nader, like Ralph Nader.
I can't speak today. He scours the Arctic and the subarctic. Mainly, he encounters native tribes.
I really thought that this was going to be the big god at the end of your campaign.
That's
Yeah.
For the Deep Dark of Radiance.
sounds like.
Yeah.
I did pull because Ithaqua was like far lesser known, and Nyarlathotep had a lot of like community things. I wanted to go more Nyarlathotep into it, and by the time this releases, that's old news.
Well, I mean, this guy, he prowls the Arctic hunting down unweary travelers and slaying them in a gruesome fashion. Like, that's what we were doing.
I actually modeled my the Great White Hunter was modeled off of Ithaqua.
I believe that.
Yeah.
So he was just spawning things that were coming after you. And if you guys had actually fought the Great White Hunter at any point in time, it would have gotten weird real quick. So
It was weird enough.
That's true. It was weird enough.
Not for me. Could have got weirder.
This guy, he's not really super well known. It's really, like I said, just kind of like the native tribes that are in the Arctic that know about him. They offer him sacrifices, but not really out of worship. It's more for appeasement. It's, here, take this and go away. Don't come back. We don't want to see you. Go over there. Like,
Leave us alone.
Have 3 seals and fuck off.
If you do actually end up worshiping him, though, one of the things he will grant you is the immunity to cold, which I thought was a pretty cool thing.
I picture frost giants worshiping him, right? Especially because of the height and whatnot as well. Like the fact that they're tall and can be lanky and immune to cold. And
I think there's a tribe of like frost goblins or snow goblins.
those are called froblins.
No, they're not.
Okay.
There's a tribe of like snow goblins that worship.
Ithaqua, they are. We're sorry, Dave. You're not used to this shit.
I don't think you are.
No?
I don't think you are, sorry. Dan might be.
I usually am.
You should be sorry. You brought up the evil taint earlier.
The evil taint.
Anyways, Dave?
Ithaqua has some servants as well. They are called the Shantak. They are flying bird dragon kind of creatures. They're larger than an elephant. They have heads resembling horses. They lay eggs, which are of huge, colossal size. And actually, my favorite piece of information I came across during this whole Cthulhu thing is their eggs are rich in flavor.
That's so fucking
Who the
weird.
hell is eating these things?
Frost giants. Frost giants and white dragons.
I would think
Oh,
even like abandoned explorers that are lost out in the wilderness or in the tundra come across this pile of Shantak eggs. And
I like the idea of you coming across the ancient white dragon. The ancient white dragon's like, look, I'm going to beat you up. Or, go get me a couple of these eggs because I'm having people over for breakfast tomorrow. So if you could do that, then... No?
Well, no, I love it. Just go over there and get the eggs because I'm having people over for dinner. It's you. You're just bringing the side dish.
You the bacon bitches. All right, Dan, what do you got?
Okay, so my next one is actually Ithaqua's daddy. I got Hastur.
nice.
Hastur is probably one of my favorites, if not.
Well, he has to be.
He has to be, right? Oh, that's too close to something else. Let's not go down that route.
Masturbating?
Yeah.
Guys.
So if you really want Hastur to go somewhere, you have to bait him. So you
No.
and you have to go talk to like
Inappropriate.
some like weird obscure tribe somewhere to go see their master Hastur baiter. No? You just gonna let me die on this one?
Oh, yeah, I'm editing this episode. We're going to leave this pause in.
Yeah, okay, cool. Anyway, so Hastur was first appeared in 1893 in Haida the Shepherd by Ambrose Bierce, who inspired Lovecraft to write about The King in Yellow, which was another series of short stories by Robert Chambers, written in 1895. There's not a lot detailed about Hastur.
Well, what's interesting is that Hastur, I believe, is one of the Egyptian gods, too. Or there's a god that's named Hastur, right?
There very much is. But in terms of Lovecraft, he is this amorphous but vast and vaguely octopoid being.
Pick one. You don't get to be both.
The great old one in Lovecraft do get to be both.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what he is. But his big thing is he is the King in Yellow. And this is basically Big Papa cult leader is what he is. He leads a group called the Yellow Sign, who are basically this group of cultists that just go around and sow discord and madness. Hastur's big thing is madness. He wants to rule the world and break the world's will through his acolytes throughout the world. So he's very...
Is he about anarchy, or is he upset about something? Do we know? Or is that just his deal? We don't get to know because he's a great old one.
We don't get to know because he's a great old one.
Right.
And like a lot of things, he dwells in the city called Carcosa, which is a big thing. It's a city. It's almost on par with R'lyeh as important Lovecraftian cities go.
I've heard the name Carcosa in many different pieces of fiction.
And he is kind of the king of Carcosa. That is his dwelling place. But he is also right up there. Like, he's the son of Yog-Sothoth, right? Like, he is a massively powerful, but still unknowable creature. And he just wants to sow this discord. So if I was to have this guy as a warlock patron, this is kind of your trickster god, is where I would go with this, in the direction with this guy. He is the one that is, you are trying to supplant governments. You are trying to break things down. You are releasing like insanity into cities to undermine its culture and economy.
See, you say trickster god, and I know everybody just thought of Loki, but then you kept talking, and you didn't describe Loki. You described Bane. Right, which is where I'm coming at. It's not. I don't get the trickster feel. It's not. I got you, bitches. This is undermining society and sowing anarchy through the world.
Yes,
right?
It is the anarchy side of
the trickster
aspect. Right,
it's pure chaos.
It's chaos, pure chaos. So that's what I would do with this guy. He also has a literal army of cultists with him. all of them wearing yellow.
I love
Faces
that, man.
covered, right?
Yeah,
like
I'm sick and
a lot
tired
of this
of
is
black and
red and like dark blue or like a dark sick
gray, brown, whatever.
Right? Like no, this is bright, vibrant yellow. You see these guys coming from a mile away, and there ain't a damn thing you could do to stop them.
And when your party sees them walking through, I don't know, Waterdeep or whatever, they're like, oh, hey, look, clerics. And they're never going to think about them again.
Oh, the clerics of Lathander. No.
Yeah.
So I would definitely do that with this guy. This is not a good Warlock patron at all. Right?
This is for your evil campaign.
This is for your evil campaign. Is your
well, I mean, the problem as well that we're not really touching on is that a lot of warlocks don't get to choose their patron. Their patron chooses them.
True, right? So that adds a lot of drama to the thing where you are battling the will or trying to just appease your patron just for the power for whatever reason you need it. Right?
This speaks to the edgelord in the party. Right?
Yeah, it really does. So that's Hastur. I freaking love Hastur. Anyways,
I would say, sorry, one last thing is if you go on and on and on about the great old ones and from the far realms beyond everything else and this octopoid creature, everyone is going to think Cthulhu. And they can gear up against Cthulhu just to find out that shit, nope, Hastur.
It's Hastur. Yeah. Right. And I would play more into the amorphous side of this. Like this guy is often described as like the shine of shadow over the sea and whatnot. He's just like the deepest dark of the ocean. That is what this guy is.
He's like a deep dark of radiance.
Almost. Yes. Plugged. Anyways, so we got one more to go here. Let's grab our dice as we all do our last gods.
Dan had a nat 20 that Adam just buggered up.
You goddamn right. And I'm coming in last, but it was worth it.
Nice. Well, I got first with a 17.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I just shoot fucking daggers at Adam.
You've been doing that the whole time.
Welcome to the past 2 years of my life.
2?
2.
Come on.
2.
Wow.
27?
No, 27.
The last one I have is
a pain in the...
Azathoth.
That's what it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is the great big granddaddy of all of these guys. He is the father of Nyarlathotep, the Nameless Mist, and Darkness.
Darkness, my old friend?
No.
Darkness with a capital D.
That was my nickname in college.
No, it was not.
It absolutely was not.
Oh.
No.
The first record of Azathoth was from a note that Lovecraft wrote himself in 1919, and all it said was, Azathoth, hideous name. Which, I love that. That's great.
Hideous name. Yeah. I also have that written at home, but it says Dan. Hideous name. And face. And personality. I'll keep going. You guys like it? No, all right. Okay.
All right. Some other names that he goes by. Oh, Jesus. He's also known as...
What the fuck up with you?
Damn it, Dan!
Dave is trying to do something.
Sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
Azathoth also...
You're a cock, by the way. Sorry to be a pain on the Azathoth.
I don't think you are. Anywho. Azathoth also goes by the Blind Idiot God, the Daemon Sultan, the Cold One, the Deep Dark, and what I like, or my favorite one, is Nuclear Chaos, which isn't like nukes going off. Keep in mind, this guy's from 1919. This is more the nucleus of the cosmos. This is kind of on a different plane than what we
he's the power
think.
Supply kind of deal.
Yeah, he's kind of like this. He's at the center of the cosmos. That's kind of his thing. You're not going to find him wandering around on Earth. He's not like that. He looks, well, it's really ambiguous. It's kind of up to whoever sees him.
Well, this guy is planet-sized.
Well, he's described a few different ways. One character describes him as a pale gray shape, expanding and crinkling, which glistened and shook gelatinously as still-moving particles dropped free.
I also have that written down under Dan's name.
Rude. That's just rude.
Accurate.
Takes one to know.
You're dripping right now.
It's warm in here.
It's the taint.
Another character sees him as a bivalvular shell, which is like a mollusk, oyster, clam, that kind of thing, that's supported on many pairs of flexible legs from the half-open shell.
Is a clam with legs?
That come out of the shell. It's like the clam mouth opens, but then the legs come out.
And it like goes upright, like it's ass in the air going along. Is that? I'm thinking like a hermit crab, maybe.
Sort of.
I'm thinking like some sort of weird Pink Floyd music video creature.
This is almost a Tool music video.
But you got to keep in mind that the appendages are tipped with a polypus appendage. Like there's more to it than just a leg.
So cancer legs sticking out of a muscle.
I like it, but also an amorphous, nothing globular. What was that crazy bullshit?
Gray crinkling, phasing,
expanding, moving particles dropping free. But he's also a horrible, bestial, mouthless face with deep sunk eyes and covered in glistening black hair. Like he's what you imagine him to be.
So okay,
he appears differently to everybody.
I've got a little bit of insight on this. Did you guys ever read the book Flatland?
No.
Okay, Flatland is a pretty famous science fiction novel where people from our third dimension run into people from the second dimension. There are entire life forms that exist in only 2 dimensions. And when we go to interact with them, they have trouble understanding that we can go over and around because they exist on only the 2 dimensions. And when we show up, we start off as a dot, and we seem to only grow to them. You think about how a sphere would be, right? In like a kind of a plane of water, where when it first touches, it would be a dot, and then as it sinks further in, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now if it's not a sphere and it's a strange shape, it would look like there are many different shapes that are all hitting at once. If you were to take like your hand stretched down, 5 fingers spread apart, that would look like 5 different beings that would then merge into one. And then you would keep going and it would turn into a wrist. And so they have trouble understanding the different sides of our dimension. And I feel like Azathoth is also all of the above, but we can only perceive one of these things at any given time. And this is what our perception, almost like the aliens in Contact. This is how we perceive, the only way that we can understand this portion of this great entity.
Well, he only really comes to you in dreams, so it's all...
Is he hanging out with Gesundheit?
Atlach-Nacha?
Yeah, that one.
Probably. And well, like, he's Big Papa Daddy, so like, Cthulhu is the dead god who sleeps. Atlach-Nacha is managing dream. Like, a lot of this has to do with the dreamland, right?
Well, you talked about Lovecraft having like constant nightmares, and we can see that in these works.
Yeah, right? There's a lot of darkness in his dreams, and it bleeds into his written works. So I would everything here is talking to you through dreams, talking to you through nightmares. I think Azathoth himself is going to like give you straight up terrifying nightmares. Like, you are waking up spitting blood or vomiting. Right?
I like the idea of Azathoth being the patron of maybe like a mind flayer warlock, someone that comes.
That's a terrifying, a terrifying notion.
I know.
My tentacles just hardened. I'm very excited about this.
All 13 of them. So yeah, I love this guy. You got anything else on him?
Not particularly.
Okay.
No, that's it. We're just gonna fizzle out on Azathoth.
No, I couldn't Azathoth of more.
that was a stretch.
Weak is why you're an intern.
Yeah.
So my final deity that I'm covering is probably my favorite of the bunch.
Do you want to? All right, I was gonna say, do you want to hold your action on this one so we can end on your big bad from the show?
Sure, let's do it.
All right.
Even though you knocked my natural fucking 20.
Well,
Adam.
Looks like a 14 to me.
I will shove this pen sideways up your nose.
Please.
My last one is Dagon. Dagon is by far my favorite of all of the Cthulhu mythos. Probably because I ran across him first. He's in the
King of the Hill, right?
He's Dagon best.
Dagon.
He first appeared in 1919 in the short story called Dagon. I'm waiting for you guys to say your shit every single time I say Dagon.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
He appeared later in his next book, Boomhauer.
Based on an actual god in ancient Syrian and Mesopotamian religions, he was eventually adopted into Assyrian and Babylonian empires, where he was then elevated to the status of the third god, alongside El and Baal,
Dude's in the Bible.
Yeah, dude. Oh, well, I'm going to get there. Yep. He's most famous as the pagan god of the Philistines, who were around in Israel during the 12th century BC. Dagon was their pagan god of fertility, who eventually morphed into an important Semitic god. Dagon's symbols were grain and fish because they're icons of fertility and multiplying. And in the Hebrew Semitic dialect, the root of Dagon, the root of the word, which is dag, means fish. And Dagon is actually an endearing term that you would call someone, meaning little fish.
Would you like eggs?
Nope.
No?
Nope. Nope.
Want to buy a cat?
He was often depicted with the torso of a man and the tail of a fish, predating even the merfolk, like mermaids and mermen of Greek mythological legends. So he's the original, like, merman that exists, which is kind of fun as well. I would have him really be involved with merfolk, and I'm going to get to that in a sec. Dagon is mentioned in the Bible, like Dan said, but he's got a connection to the Ark of the Covenant, which held the holy tablets in which the Ten Commandments were written, according to the Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Israelites...
And also the Bible.
The Israelites carried the ark while they were walking through the desert for 40 years. And according to the biblical text, the Philistine captured the ark and took it to their capital city of Ashdod to place it in the temple of Dagon. The next day, they found the idol of Dagon had fallen on its face. They thought it was a coincidence, so they replaced the statue. And when they returned the next day, they found a new statue decapitated. They kept doing this over and over again until eventually the city was hit with a plague of mice and everyone got hemorrhoids. So,
hot.
That's a pain in the ass. As far as Lovecraft is concerned, Dagon appeared for the first time in the short story called
Dagon.
There we go. You guys paying attention? Which is actually an awesome little bit of weirdness for anyone that's about to get on a ship. So you guys should all check it out. It's creepy and weird and is not... It makes me a little terrified to go out to sea. And the first time that I saw Life of Pi, I thought I was watching an adaptation of it. But then, no, I wasn't. And I was sad. He is considered a great old one, and he's worshipped by an amphibious race of humanoids called the Deep Ones, and you hear about them actually a lot throughout the mythos.
You really do, yeah.
In the expanded Cthulhu mythos, he's also called Father Dagon, and he makes sexy time with Mother Hydra. He's also worshipped by an ancient cult in Innsmouth called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. I like that. I think that's fun. As a sidebar, I'll talk about Deep Ones really quickly. All Deep Ones in Cthulhu lore continue to grow slowly after they reach maturity, provided that they are within reach of a steady diet. There are ancient Dagon carvings that display what appear to be several gigantic Deep Ones wrestling with whales, and it's entirely conceivable that the visage of Dagon has really just been confused with elder Deep Ones, and no one really knows what Dagon looks like. I would, in D&D, use Koatoa or Sahuagin. Yeah. But... Did you guys know that Dagon's actually in D&D proper? He was in the Monster Manual 2 in the first edition and was written by Gygax himself. He's considered a demon lord, prince of the depths, from the 89th layer of the abyss, aka the Shadow Sea. He's got a massive black eel face with long, sharp teeth and dozens of tentacles, and he has a history of infecting people's dreams and subjugating marine life in an effort to become a god.
This is interesting because he's not the only biblical... demon lord level thing that Gygax wrote into the game, because Moloch is also there.
Yeah.
Right? But he made Dagon a demon prince, basically, and Moloch's a archfiend. Like, he's an archdevil.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting as the Bible nerd of the group.
So he attacks water-based realms every 720 years, inflicting major damage and near genocide on a regular basis. He's opposed specifically by merfolk and other good aquatic beings. For Warlock Patron, I would say that you would give him access to things like Dream, Water Breathing, Water Walk, anything Water Wall, and like Wonder Wall, Champagne Supernova.
No.
All right, I've gone off. Okay. Maybe an Evil
Oasis.
Triton. Yes, that was the joke. God, fuck. So, yeah, I would use an Evil Triton or a Sea Elf. Maybe even a Lizard Folk or UNT, something that's you can picture being aquatic or amphibious, right? We said Koatoa. I would have Sea Hags, Chuls, Mero, and Naga involved with Dagon. But I really like the idea of, because he's a demon lord, have Hezrus and Wastroliths involved. I also kind of got the idea of a plot hook for the concept of going all things aquatic, where there's like a peninsula maybe with 3 major religions. The cult of the dragon turtle, the cult of the kraken, and the cult of the leviathan. And then ultimately they're trying to summon Dagon to flood the world for whatever reason, right? And that could be a big bad, and that could be an entire campaign based around this. And there are stats if you want to do the conversion out there, right? Mm-hmm. So I think Dagon's a lot of fun. I was really happy to see that my favorite was already adapted into D&D. And I'm sure that if I do a deep dive into first edition, we can find more weird, common, sure, like Lovecraft or biblical or whatever, versions of these bigger than life creatures. I mean, I even just said Baal. There's got to be Baal or Beelzebub or someone that's
there's a few
that's
of those
in D&D.
Oh, even Baphomet, which is another name for the devil, right?
Yeah.
So, last but certainly not least, we have mentioned multiple times how all of the above 11 deities and creatures of power that we've talked have been mainly unknowable. These guys are aberrant in nature. They are cosmic in reality and thus twist, and it's hard to get their message out among the people. That is why Nyarlathotep exists. Nyarlathotep is by far my favorite of all the Cthulhu mythos. He is the messenger of the great old ones. He is the one who comes back and really he's the guy who rolls the red carpet out for whatever god is coming in to...
He's like Metatron of the great old ones.
He's the Metatron of the great old ones.
Which is not a Transformer.
No.
Oh.
Yeah. Watch Supernatural, folks.
The voice of the one true God?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So...
Alan Rickman.
Yes.
Nyarlathotep got that Egyptian flair to him, and that's with good reason, is because he comes from a vision that H.P. Lovecraft had, which inspired his first appearance, which is a self-titled poem called Nyarlathotep that came out in 1920. He is the creeping chaos. He is the master of shadow. He goes beyond all and through all. He is the Lord of Worms. Like, this guy...
Those are all my nicknames in college.
This guy's awesome. And his big thing is to get the word of the gods out. And often the word of the gods is, y'all gonna die. He uses often black slug-like creatures, worm-like creatures that often bear his visage, this human-like face that is vaguely Egyptian, to take over the will and the minds of an entire populace of people in order so that they can all come together, bring him into the world so that he can speak these words of damnation and doom among the world, and then he will go and let just those words wreak havoc. He is often a massive inspiration for H.P. Lovecraft for all of his other books. In fact, H.P. Lovecraft had a lot of pen pals and whatnot that would write to him since he was such a recluse. And the legend is he got this one note that from one of his pen pals that said, "Don't fail to see Nyarlathotep if he comes to Providence. He is horrible. Horrible beyond anything you can imagine, but wonderful. He haunts one for hours afterwards. I'm still shuddering at what he showed." Nyarlathotep will go through and show you the reality of the cosmos, which will break your mind undoubtedly. He will also infest you with his slugs.
I'm sorry, what does he get from infesting with the slugs?
Total control over you. The slugs work their way into your body, and he now owns you.
So he's about enslaving.
He's all about enslaving in order to propagate his word, his message that he is on the realm to deliver. He pops up all over the world many different times in different cultures. He has heavy Egyptian roots and is often described as a tall Egyptian-shaped man with long features.
What is an Egyptian-shaped man?
Vaguely Egyptian-looking. So the bronze skin, but he's often wreathed in shadow. The exotic features, pharaoh-like features.
The pharaoh is Egyptian?
Pharaoh.
Pharaoh. I thought you said feral, and I'm like, that's just not nice, Dan.
No. So,
how very Lovecraftian of you.
He is also, of course, like most other Lovecraftian gods, massive. He stands 20, 30 feet tall, and is this humanoid shape that is wreathed in shadow. You can't really discern his true features, but when you do, they look vaguely Egyptian. I used him as the big bad on the Deep Dark Radiance because of this trend he has to come forth from these different realms and enslave groups of people to his whim, especially enforcing this sense of isolation to get his word out.
Now, everything that you're talking about is enslaving and getting the word out and subjugating peoples. Do his slaves have a hive mind? Like, is that something you could do? Is that
100%.
Is that on message with this guy?
Yes. These guys are, if you watch like Hot Fuzz, they're that for the greater good. Like, everyone is just chanting and has become mindless and is driving this message out, right? These are the mindless husks of creatures that are
drones almost.
Drones, yeah, right? Like, these are the ones where if you were walking into town and you're a visitor and the first time you see them, there's just something slightly off. Like, their eyes don't blink the way they should or something, and you just catch it out of the corner of your eye.
It feels like they're wearing a human skin almost.
Yeah, right? Like, everyone's wearing Edgar suits. So it's...
they're walking down the street going, Nyarlathotep.
Or, yeah.
Nyarlathotep.
Yeah, right? And then, like, they'll be standing staring up into nothingness with this look of rapture. And then you're, like, completely oblivious to whatever is going on around them. And then you will draw their attention and they'll be back to being normal, right? With no memory of what they just did, right? That is the type of weird...
I feel like they look at you like your food sometimes. Well, like, they just have that look like you will be my next victim. We're going to... Like, that look that Terry gives you every once in a while.
Anyways... That's why I love Nyarlathotep. In a D&D campaign, this guy is... using your warlock to get the message out, to collect people, to enslave other people, either willingly or not, either bringing them into the cult through persuasion or straight up infecting them with these worms in order to bring him back into this reality, to sow his discord, to send out his message. Right? That's what this guy is getting you to do. So he's probably sending you around to grab a bunch of MacGuffins, to collect people, to gather ingredients, to breed these worms and bring these worms out into the reality so that the crawling chaos can spread. Right? That is what this guy is going to be doing. As a player itself, I would definitely be trying to buy into this. And I'm playing this guy like walking into the tavern and slipping like little worms in drinks and like spiking people or like clapping people on the back of the head as I walk by them and forcing one of these worms into the base of their skull. Something like that.
This feels so evil campaign though. Like, you're not...
Oh, 100%.
You're not a good guy with being a patron of
no, Nyarlathotep is straight up evil.
Yeah.
Right?
I wouldn't use him. I would use him as a bad guy for Warlock cults. I wouldn't use him I wouldn't let a player have him because there's no mechanic for worm infestation. And I feel like you can just go kind of hog wild with this.
Well, you get certain things like Everett's Black Tentacles, which really fit this theme well.
Right. But I just feel like every time that the party gets a beloved NPC, this guy's going to come along and just derail. This is going to be the least popular player at the table because he's consistently fucking over what everybody else is doing. Because he's like, no, worms. Oh, your beloved mount? Worms. That is what's happening here.
Well, I think it would fit in an evil campaign.
In an evil campaign? Sure. But I mean, I wouldn't let this just be your standard. Even everyone's chaotic neutral, and we're going to play in the gray area. This is not a gray area guy. This guy is meant for one-shots or short evil campaigns.
Yeah, this is the guy that is calling doom. And even to a certain extent, like, your soothsayers, your witch doctors will worship this guy. Outside of cults, like he is prophetic in nature. So a lot of divination will bring him into play as well.
Okay.
Cool. So that is our gods that we chose to cover. There's a bunch of others outside of...
That's the tip of the iceberg. There's a bunch more.
There are tons. So The one last thing we did want to talk about real briefly, for mainly your Pact of the Tome Warlocks, Adam.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the reason why Terry's not here? Because we could not hear him say Necronomicon again.
Okay, so the phrase Necronomicon, the word Necronomicon, comes from Lovecraft. Lovecraft created it, and he actually started talking about the original Greek translation of what the word means, which is the book of the image of the dead, necro being dead, and then I'm lost, Laura.
Nomicon.
Nomicon. No, so I'm
Necros
sorry.
meaning dead, nomos meaning book, icon meaning image of.
Right, except that icon does not mean image of. And I did a bunch of research into that because it sounds fucking wrong to me. And it's just a suffix that they use to say that this is an item. So that doesn't mean the image. It just means Book of the Dead. Or more specifically, it means Book of Dead Things. And so that doesn't really fit the Cthulhu mythos, though. As much as it is about death and subjugation, it's more about slavery and insanity and the unknowable. So I don't really like it as part of the the Cthulhu mythos. Yeah, Dan's giving me this weird look.
No, I completely disagree. This is the Avengers to Marvel to the...
I'm sorry, Avengers is Marvel. What do you
I know. This is the Avengers to all of the other solo Marvel movies. Like, the Book of the Dead, the Necronomicon, pops up in so much of Lovecraft's works
but it's
and
just...
binds everyone together. It is the book that Nyarlathotep is giving people to translate his word out. But Hastur is sitting there and he exists with the book and writes in the book. Like, this Book of the Dead pops up all over the place and is the thing that kind of binds all of these different gods together.
Right, because they're all mentioned in it, and it's specifically meant, it's got in the scripture itself the idea that, A, if you read it, you will go insane. So we have that normal Lovecraftian adage, but honestly, there's nothing about the dead in it. It's a misnomer, right? And that's my problem with it, is people are going to go look, your necromancers are going to go looking for this, and it's not a necromancy thing. This is a warlock thing, right? And so your thing about the Book of the Dead and the Lovecraftian version of the Book of the Dead, the Necronomicon, that's for you, Terry, I hope you're listening, is it's, first of all, was translated into Greek, and then all of the Greek versions were destroyed. It's been translated into Latin, and all of the Latin versions have been destroyed. And the thing about that Lovecraft keeps coming back to over and over again is that it's hidden, it's sitting inside different bindings of other books. And so I think it's the case of Dexter Ward, where he opens up a book and finds that it is a Necronomicon, and he wasn't looking for it. It just happened to be that book. And it's hidden, and there's only like 2 or 3 copies around, and it's not in English, and this is not something that is easily found. Look, people thought that it actually existed. He was it the FBI that looked into Lovecraft and be like, all right, where did you get this crazy satanic bullshit from? And he's like, no, it's not satanic. I made it up. It's nonsense. It's all fictional. And it is. Despite the fact that people keep listing it on like antique sites and stuff and saying, I have a version of this. And it's not a real thing, okay? It's popularized these days because of Evil Dead more than anything else. And the idea of it being bound in human flesh and written in blood is an Evil Dead thing. That's not even a Lovecraftian thing. Yeah, look into it. Dan's like, no, that's wrong. And I'm like, no, that's how it is. I really did my research on this one because everything that I read about it was contradictory. Everything that I thought was true about the Necronomicon isn't, right? And so the stuff that, when I was looking into it, it's not even a spell book, really. It tells you how to, and everyone uses it as a grimoire, as a that's full of spells. It's just how to speak to the great old ones. And how to do some of the rituals, but it's not casting spells. It's, well, you want to use black candles for this and make sure that you have exactly 13 people for it. And it's almost like a how-to guide to talk to them and to summon them, but you won't even do it because you go insane. I don't think that the Necronomicon is something that I could have in a game. Not the real Necronomicon, not the Lovecraftian version. I have one in my own personal game, and it is all about necromantic spells and raising the dead, and I leaned into the concept of Book of the Dead. But the Lovecraftian version, I wouldn't use in a D&D game, right? Because all you're going to do is give your players the power to summon Yig and Dagon and Tsathoggua, and you don't want to do that. Now you're adding sanity rolls to your campaign every time they look in the book, right?
I don't know. A book of that power, like I wouldn't add it as a player-bound MacGuffin. I would definitely put it as you are trying to stop a cult from getting it, or stop a...
But the moment you introduce it into the world, your players are going to want it. The same thing, I've never known a group of players to come across the deck of many things and not say, can we own it? Can we have it? I want that, please. All right? They're not scared of flipping the cards. They want to make other people flip the cards, right? And that's the thing. This is, in my opinion, so powerful that you should not put it in the game, because it's not what you think it is. It's something that's bigger, and it's something that's far more dangerous. And we keep talking about the unknowable and the insanity and whatnot. I wouldn't use Yog-Sothoth. I wouldn't use Cthulhu because it's a little on the nose and cheesy, and I wouldn't use the Necronomicon for exactly those two reasons. Mm-hmm. The fact that it's a little bit on the nose and cheesy and very unknowable, and I wouldn't put it in a game. And Dan's looking shocked at me. He did not expect me to go this route. I'm like, I'll cover the Necronomicon. He's like, okay, good. Remember to talk about this? No, I will talk about this. You have a totally different spiel. You disagree with me, and I want to hear what you have to say.
No, I mean, I've actually owned the Lovecraftian Necronomicon book.
But it's just his short stories.
No, like the actual Necronomicon. Like I've owned the one that has like
bound in human flesh.
No, not bound in human flesh, but like the one that is has like the weird drawings and has the sayings that you guys heard earlier, and where to find those, like the incantations version, and the cantrips to summon. Like I've read through it. I love it. I think it's a fun little book. It's a great inspiration for wizards and warlocks to really pull into a more crafty sense of how to, if you want to generate what a spell looks like in D&D, you will go this route, because there's material components, verbal components, there's how to hold your hand and what runes to draw. All of that is in here, and this is a really good place for inspiration for players. I really like it for that.
But that book is not the Lovecraftian version. I know that it is all about the Lovecraft mythos, but it wasn't Lovecraft's. Somebody went and put all of this stuff together almost as fanfic, because all of his stuff is public domain, and they said, here you go, here's all the stuff you can use, and that's fine, but that's not the stuff that's in Lovecraft's stories. Right? So I think what you're talking about, this grimoire that's full of spells and rituals and the runes drawn and whatnot, is fine, but it's not the true Lovecraft. I have a Necronomicon in my campaign, my homebrew, but it's different. And I think that if you want to use it, you have to adapt it. Because you can't use it as is. And even if you put it in the player's hands, that's a bad idea. That's giving them a loaded gun.
Sure.
You're just giving wish spells. Right, at third level, right? It's the same thing to me. By the time that you're able to summon any god you want from this mythos,
you have to go through and you have to give them level appropriate challenges to gain the materials to do it, right? It's just an opening for more MacGuffin work, right? And I'm okay with that in a game, right? I'm okay with the Lovecraftian version of this in a game. I'm like, if you have a Lovecraftian Great Old One Patron Warlock in your group, you should have the Lovecraftian Old Great One version of the Necronomicon in your game, and like have the by the lore, the Necronomicon's written by Al-Azif, who is the crazy mad Arab, which is what he's just called. Abdul Al-Hazred.
Yeah,
right?
Whatever you said, the Al-Hazif.
Yeah, the Al-Hazif is what it's originally called, which is the nocturnal sound made by insects, supposed to be the howling of demons. Right? It's basically the sound of crickets and echidnas just screeching.
Yeah, and that makes, was it Beelzebub that was the Prince of Flies?
Yeah,
like that's where that I think comes from as well.
In a way, yeah.
But no, there's a lot of conflicting stuff too about Lovecraft's origins of the books and where it was and where there have been copies of it and things like that as well. And the thing about it is the book burns real easily. There have been hundreds of copies apparently that have just like been burned in libraries and they don't exist anymore.
Well, during the whole Satanic Panic thing, it was another one of those things that came up as A lot of D&D players were finding themselves with, the Necronomicon. And then if you played D&D and you had a Necronomicon, you clearly were a Satan worshiper. So during the Satanic Panic in the 70s and 80s, man, like this was a focal point for that movement, and a lot of books got burned because of it. It is, keep in mind, a fictional book written in part by a crazy shut-in who experienced nightmares.
Yeah, okay, see,
and heavy abuse in his life. In part,
this is where we're splitting hairs. Is I'm saying that you're talking about like the actual books that have been published, and I'm talking about the books that Lovecraft are talking about. In Lovecraft's like lifetime, no such book was ever published. He never published it. And while it will take quotes from his other books and put them into the Necronomicon, he never published it. It's fanfic. It's third party. Right.
Most of Lovecraft, like most of what is Lovecraftian canon, is built beyond him after his death. No, you look at this thing, which is the one like Shudde M'Ell, which was first appeared in 1969, way after he died.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm aware of that, but I'm talking about that even in his original lore, it was easy to burn these books. Right. These books that were originally written by Abdul, whatever his name was, which is not even a real name, right?
Yeah.
And was discovered in the 1400s here and was in the 1700s, and he came with this whole backstory about the different translations and what cities they were in and which libraries burned and whatnot. There's great, huge lore about it, but it's not real. None of it's real. And someone finally said, you know what, we should publish it. And it's the kind of stuff that you would expect to find at a Comic-Con. I'm not joking. That is the kind of stuff that I would expect to find at a Comic-Con. Right?
Exactly.
So, but again, if you're going to have a necromancer, I don't have any problem doing that. If you're going to have a great old one, Warlock patron, yeah, sure, you can give them the book.
Especially if they're Pack of the Tome, man. Like,
I don't know.
It's right there. That is one of the... I think Warlocks get Pack of the Tome because of that. Right? Like, it fits the flavor to a T. Give them that ancient book that's been handed down from century to century, from guardian to guardian, the one that has managed to avoid burnings all the way through. You have your book of ancient shadows, and that is what this is.
I'm telling you right now, I have a Necronomicon that is in one of my campaigns. I'm running an evil campaign on Tuesday nights, and on Monday nights, my 101 campaign with Mieka, she just died and went to hell. So I'm all about the big, evil, crazy nonsense and whatnot, but this is not something... The ability to summon gods is too much. I would have it be very difficult. Maybe you find pages from it. I'll give you that. But the ability to say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to bring forth Yog-Sothoth into the Feywild. Like, don't do that shit. Well, is my point.
Sure. Well, I think you and I are actually kind of saying the same thing where I'm like, I'm okay with the book in there, but make it level appropriate to be able to cast these spells. If near impossible, right? Like a group of level 20 characters who are going to Mount Celestia to talk to their gods should also be able to summon a warlock patron.
Yeah, you know what?
And deal with the ramifications thereof. If you are pulling a great old one into the material plane, right into the middle of Neverwinter, you are destroying Neverwinter in your world. It's just what's going to happen.
Yeah, you're bringing the apocalypse down.
Right?
Guess what? Next session, it's Dark Sun.
Yeah,
that's what's happening.
And you're going to have a team of plucky adventurers who are hunting your character down to stop you. Right? Like, that's what I'm saying. Have it in there, sure, but it is a...
This is 10th, 11th, 12th level magic.
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't include that in my regular D&D campaign. It would have to be a high level evil campaign for me to do that. Right? And I think that you're saying something similar.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily hold it to just evil characters, but yeah. But anyways, gentlemen, that is our talk off of the gods. Is there anything else we want to bring up?
Dave has been the great white silence for the last 20 minutes as well. He's just sitting there like ping pong neck going back and forth looking at
when you and I get into it, Terry often does the same thing too.
Yeah. Terry cowers under the table.
So is there anything else we want to talk about the Lovecraftian gods? Lovecraft himself before we move on?
No, Dan, I don't have anything else.
Dave?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Well, that will be it for today's special episode on Lovecraft and Warlock patrons, specifically the great old ones. Remember to tell your friends, and they can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as dozens of other podcast apps. You can also find us at itsamimic.com or email us at info@itsamimic. Thanks for tuning in to the It's a Mimic podcast.